Kevin Lindsey, by the way, is the manager of technical service at Travel Centers of America. He joins us on a regular basis, meaning every single Tuesday here on Maintenance Matters, but every once in a while on a regular basis. Eric Arnold, field engineer, and Byron Kelchner, the senior national account manager for fleets over at Castrol, join us as well too. So I will avoid Howard Hawks' film from breaking out and having all three of you say good morning together and simply say, Kevin, good morning.
Good morning, Jimmy. How are you?
Good morning to you, my friend. And Eric, good morning.
Hey, good morning, Jimmy.
And Byron, good morning.
Good morning, everybody.
It's good to have you. Kevin, let's take a moment here to kind of unpack what we're talking about today, because oil can certainly tell us a lot, can it not?
Oh, absolutely, right? Lifeblood of the engine, right? Lifeblood of trucking, however you want to look at it. I mean, kind of literally, right? Without that lubrication factor, none of this stuff works right. You know what I mean?
I do. And by the way, today is National Occult Day. And I'm saying that because so many things that involve the occult involve reading signs, reading mysterious signs, looking at things and trying to ascertain the truth from the way something looks, from the way something smells, from the way something feels, and then coming to conclusions. And you could make a case that oil and occult begin with an O for very similar reasons, because so much of understanding what is going on from a performance standpoint, from a wear standpoint, and the overall engine health really depends a lot on how we're able to interpret what our oil is doing, what it's telling us, and when it is time to either change it or consider actually changing the oil that we use. So I'm going to start by kind of digging in here with Eric. Can you talk just a little bit to us, just a little bit about how to kind of have a relationship with how you check your oil, what you're looking for, and all that stuff, and then we'll pivot to Byron, and then we'll go back to Kevin. So, Eric, let's start off with you.
Sure. It should be almost a routine, right? That's what everybody says, but it really should be part of your routine. Get used to checking it frequently, and what I mean by checking it is just something you can do at the side of the truck. Lift the hood. Look at your oil level. Check your dipstick. Check for leaks. Look around the engine. The dipstick will tell you an awful lot about what's going on inside of that engine just by looking at it. What does your oil level look like? How does the oil look on the dipstick? How does it smell? Sounds kind of weird, but if you're used to it and you know it, there's always going to be a slight diesel smell. But if one day you check and whoa, it's the level's high and you can smell a lot of diesel, chances are you've got a leak. So there's a lot you can see. If you've got leaks somewhere on the engine, around the side near the filters, if you've got oil going out, chances are you've got contamination going back in. You've got an opening somewhere. These are all things that can really tell you a lot about what's going on inside that engine.
Eric, I'm going to ask you a very ignorant question, but I think the only kind of questions you should ask are ignorant. If you're, unless you're an attorney and you basically should know the answers to what the question you're asking. And since I'm not, I'm going to take a chance here. When you talk about the idea of smelling the diesel, is it because that you're able to smell so much diesel in it because the diesel's on top of it? The idea is that kind of the process of what's going on here, that the more diesel you smell, it cuts through the smell of the oil, and that you're able to kind of tell that something else is inside of the oil? Why is it that we're able to smell diesel so clearly? Why doesn't it get kind of, there's certain things that nullify the smell of one thing, and there's certain things that are actually able to overpower it, and a lot of things get on top of oil. And I'm saying that metaphorically. Are you following me here?
I am. And diesel has a very strong odor. And of course, this is a very subjective test. I mean, if you have a lot of nasal congestion, and I'm certainly not recommending that someone puts their nose next to the dipstick and starts huffing on the thing.
No, that makes you a dipstick. Actually, if you do that, that actually makes you a genuine dipstick. 'Cause when you said people should check their dipstick, I kept thinking about Dre checking on me. But go ahead. Sorry, continue, Eric.
No, but it's something that's always going to be there. It's pervasive in engine oil just because injection pressures are really high. It's what helps turn all the moving parts in that engine. It is that fuel. It's not always going to achieve perfect combustion. There's going to be diesel in there. However, if you're used to checking it, there's always going to be a slight odor to it just because it's there. But if you do have a bad leak, it will be very clear that you'll smell it. You'll pull the dipstick out and you'll be holding it, and it's like, oh, there's just a lot more than usual. And that's really what you want to look for. And that's why if it's something that you check frequently, you'll be able to notice that difference rather than, if you just go pull it out today and you smell diesel, it's like, well, is that more than before? I don't know. But it's just an indicator to help point you in the right direction, if that answers your question.
It does, and it actually leads me to a real quick question to Kevin. So it seems to me, in regards to a regular kind of reoccurrence of ongoing maintenance, that when you actually have genuine maintenance, I take my rig into you, Kevin. At the end of it, it might not be a bad idea when you're like, look, this is where it should be. We've actually got your truck humming. We've got that natural harmonic going here, as you like to call it, to take a sniff of that dipstick and to be like, that's my baseline. So I know what that smells like when everything has been done diligently, that I have a sense of where it should be, so that when the changes do occur, I have that reference point to kind of go back to. That it almost seems like when you guys do maintenance on something, it's a really good time to check all the kind of stuff that Eric was just talking about. Is that fair?
Yeah. No, I think that is fair. And actually, that's kind of a good idea in a sense, Jimmy, because, as far as all of our senses that we have, smell links to memory more than any of them, I believe. So from things I've read. So, and I know for me it does.
Well, let me tell you something, Kevin. If you combine cherry juice, whiskey, and oranges, all I think about is my grandparents. I kid you not, man. I just think about an old fashioned on a porch. That's the absolute truth. And guys, feel free to chime in as I ask questions here. Byron, I wanted to kind of ask you, because in many ways, both Kevin and Eric can articulate this as well. But for the sake of those, we're always onboarding new people into the industry who know how to drive but don't have a full grasp of everything. Can you kind of talk in overall? I'm sure Kevin has some thoughts about how oil moves through and kind of protects the engine. I mean, what its principal purpose is in its movement through the engine.
Yeah, certainly. And real quick before that, since you mentioned it was National Occult Day, I think that might be one of the best references for the way people are about oil. So I think that was really good, and I never thought about it that way. Certainly, it's tough to get people to move off of what they kind of believe in. Certainly, but really, I do think when you look at kind of the functions of an engine oil, there's a couple of things of what it's trying to do. Of course, primary role is to reduce friction between two metal components that are, in constant contact with each other with high amount of pressure, high amount of wear points. So that oil is there for that to kind of, lubricate against the friction and reduce the metal-to-metal contact. The other thing it's trying to do is move heat away. So it's trying to move heat away from those internal components and kind of move that to another area and draw that heat down, because everything that's going on inside of that engine, and today's engines operate at a higher temperature than what they did 15, 20 years ago. So there's a lot of heat we have to move. So we're asking an awful lot of an engine oil versus what maybe we asked of an engine oil 20 years ago, especially when you look at emissions, with EGR coolers. So we're taking that exhaust gas, and recirculating that back into the combustion cycle of that engine. So, we have this hot air that's kind of moving through. So we're really trying to do a lot of things like that with it as well. And the other thing we're trying to do is really extend the life of the engine as well with it. So we're reducing friction, we're reducing heat by trying to transfer that from one spot to another. But on top of that, we're asking a lot of that engine oil to extend the life of that engine far more than what we did before, especially when you look at drain intervals. I mean, 20 years ago, people were, consistently changing oil at maybe 15 to 30,000 miles. They would kind of change their engine oil out. A lot of fleets now, you're looking at 70,000. And with the upcoming, regulations and new oils that'll be coming out about a year or so from now, we're looking at pushing that goalpost even further down the road. So we're asking an awful lot of an engine oil nowadays.
Yeah, and that sort of asking of the engine means that, we talk about the idea that so many things are getting onboarded to quote unquote make life easier on the driver. In many ways, they make for a better ride. They make for a more pleasant experience. It feels to me like the trade-off is, though, okay, you claim to be a high-skilled tradesman, and they are. You claim to be somebody who really is on top of the ins and outs of your truck. We're asking for people to become almost more attentive in what is going on, that it isn't about checking out more, it's about checking in more, that you really want to be kind of on top of it because you want to guarantee what all of the new technology has to offer. Seems to be the trade-off there, that it's like, yes, you're getting a lot of great stuff, but we're asking you to be more mindful in your maintenance. Is that fair, Byron?
Yeah, no, I really do think so. I think that's a good point. We are asking a lot more of people. So, as you know, trucks don't cost the same as what they did 10 years ago. You can ask anybody that's needed to replace a piece of equipment or any fleet out there. I mean, the cost is kind of going through the roof. So really looking at kind of protecting that investment. And it's more than just, hey, get behind the wheel, pointing it down the road and, and doing that and just trying to do that safely. There's a lot of things you have to go on and think about. And I kind of think back to, what Eric was talking about a little bit, and even Kevin as well, kind of thinking about getting that baseline on it. For me, I think one of the big things, even when I was kind of a former driver, was that pre-trip inspection, right? So, you got a new piece of equipment. You want to try and become, I'm going to say, kind of intimate with that equipment and understand the ins and outs and what the sounds are of it. I think that pre-trip inspection before a driver heads out for that day, check that engine oil level. Those are one of the things, but there's a multitude of things, right? We're not looking at, hey, are the tires inflated? Are all the lights working, and then I'm just going to head down the road. We need to look a little bit deeper than that. But that's how we get to learn our equipment. And that's also how you start to learn, hey, something is off. I need to kind of look into something a little bit further. Maybe I need to reach out to a guy like Kevin at TA and get a little bit of help here along the way.
Yeah, and that kind of goes back, I think, to what Kevin and I talked about, the idea that one of the obligations you have is when somebody tunes you up, somebody gets you in tip-top shape, it isn't your job to be like, thanks, and then roll on out. It's like, tell me what you've done, show me what you've done, and show me what it should look like when everything is exactly as it should be. I want to give you guys a laugh. We got a lot of folks out there in the chat right now throwing in comments. 10 Ring, Craig Daniels, who many of you guys might know as a Citizen Driver of the Year, said, my old boss and mentor with aviation maintenance actually taught me to taste oil, just a drop and squished on the roof of my mouth. And we're laughing about that, but I'm telling you, it goes back to the occult thing. There are tips there. Kevin, is that fair? I mean, could you actually discern?
It is.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I'm not one of those that can tell the difference as far as the taste. Now, as a technician for many years, I've tasted every fluid that's in these diesel engines at some point in time. But I can tell you, as far as discerning a taste, to tell the difference between good and bad, I'm not going to say I can do that. But, quite honestly, I have had several techs over the years in my classes that have told me that they're able to determine, if oil, coolant, DEF even was good by tasting it. I'm like, I'm not telling you to do that. I can't tell you that's a good way of doing it, but I know it's out there. So, I appreciate that. That's one of those good things because, I remember back in my military days, I did have an old sergeant told me that one day. He said, hey, if you don't think it's right, just taste it. See what you think. I'm like, I ain't tasting that.
Let me tell you something, though, guys. Be careful how much you taste, because one taster is literally in a garage. The other taster is literally under an interstate. And there's a big difference between the two kinds of tasting that go on there. Eric, I wanted to kind of talk about what the long-term effects of this are, because a lot of people don't realize catastrophic is catastrophic. Literally being the girl in the car, or the newbie who literally has no idea what he or she is doing behind the wheel of a truck, and the whole thing kind of unraveling because they never bothered to check it or change it at all. But not doing your maintenance at the level you should on a regular basis, you might get around to changing it. But when you finally decide to make the change to oil, sometimes the damage is already done. And then at that point, when you let it go too far, even if from that point on you start doing maintenance again, it's kind of like quitting smoking late in life. That it's like, yeah, good for you now that you've got your life back on track, but you can't make up for the damage that you were doing by letting things run too far, right? I mean, there's a point where you've got to stay on top of this, because one bad period of time where you don't keep up with this can do things that cannot be fixed by simply getting diligent about oil, correct?
Yes, and I've had too many conversations over the point of my career where we've reached that point, and as much as I would love it to, if the oil could be poured in and magically heal the engine components, I think Byron would have a pretty easy time out there selling the oil. But it's, unfortunately, we're not at that point yet. And like you said, it's so easy to just think, I'll just push this down the road. It seems to be running fine, right? And if this is something you do yourself but you don't have time, there are experts out there like our friends at TA that you can just pull in, get your service done, have it done right, and I guarantee you it would cost a lot less than having your vehicle recovered or having to replace some components. I mean, a little bit of savings can certainly cost a lot in the end if it's not done the right way.
There, by the way, Kevin, is a football analogy here that actually works. I talk about Baker Mayfield at Cleveland. Had he actually taken the advice of doctors and ignored the people of the Browns organization and sat himself for that fateful year, he would not have exacerbated an injury that took him off his career path for 2.5 years until he finally makes his way to Los Angeles for that magic night that gets him over to Tampa. But people forget that, too, that pushing something too hard, whatever the stakes are, can often do long-term damage to the truck that a simple tune-up can no longer fix, and that's important. So let's talk about tools and tests. Kevin, I will start with you, and then we'll turn back to Byron and Eric and kind of get through this. Are there tools and tests that really, along with checking that dipstick, that really kind of help you spot problems before they start?
Well, yeah, and quite honestly, Eric really alluded to the key point, and so did Byron with the pre-trip there. You've got to look for those leaks. The outward signs of the issues. But because when you stop and think about that, just like Eric said, when you do have a leak, and this is true with any system on the truck, almost anything. When you got something under pressure that's coming out of an opening, there's inevitably, the laws of physics get into play. So there's a little bit of a vacuum on the outside edges of that, regardless of how that's flowing outward. So there's going to be contaminants that's going to come in. If stuff can go out, there's things coming in at the microscopic level that you may not even realize. So keeping up with that, and a lot of this, like we're talking about now, I'm never going to suggest to anyone, well, taste it and see if it tastes right to you. But the smell is definitely a thing. The smell, the look, the feel. That's something that I've always taught technicians over the years, is when you are checking oil, feel that with your run it across your fingers a little bit, feel it. Do you feel any grit? Do you see any sparkles in that oil? Hey, look, there's some gold. Hey, I must have gold dust in my engine. Well, it's probably not gold. It's bronze. There's some materials wearing in that engine. That's what that is.
I'm going to make you laugh. Kevin, wait for this. Wait, Dave Nemo jumped in the chat, and he wants to know if you guys have any oil sommelier openings. if you guys might have a position around for everybody who wants to kind of jump in and taste a little oil and see if they can get something kind of going on from that.
Well, it being a cult day, maybe we should,
That's true.
We got to get the oil taster. Let's go get Nemo. Yeah, that ain't right. Oh, this is going to run you. Take a little taste of it and kind of figure out things from there. Byron, when you talk to your customers, and when you talk about the products that you guys have to offer, this pushing it a little bit further, which people shouldn't do. But this is in a case where people really are up against the clock and time does not only fly, but it slips past you. This is why getting a quality oil is so important, because people do forget. And I was thinking about this in regards to what Eric had to say. The idea is that if you let it go too far just a little bit each time before you change it, that accumulates as well too. So that's really why it's crucial to make sure that you get the kind of oil that actually allows you maybe every once in a while to go, you know what, I let this go too far, but I should be okay this time because of the product I'm using, correct?
Yeah, that's true. And, and I would say, us as an oil marketer, right? We're an oil manufacturer. We will have some guidelines out there as far as where our products kind of go. And let's just say one of our more top tier products, our long drain product, because we've engineered it for a certain way, out to 80,000 miles kind of with that. So I would tell you is there's an awful lot of work that goes into us being able to comfortably say, hey, here's a product that we've made, that we've engineered, that can go out here for an extended long drain period of time. What I would also tell you is there's kind of a backstop built into that. There's a cushion kind of built into that as well, because we know without a doubt that somebody's going to forget. Somebody's going to push it a little too far. That happens. And Kevin knows that, right? Everybody thinks, oh, I thought I just had my oil changed last month. Well, no, it was, 6 months ago. You kind of weren't on top of it. So those are some of the things that we do is you have to engineer a product for the worst case scenario and then some on top of it, I think. And I think one other point to kind of make, and I, years ago in a previous life when I, had a role similar to Kevin, but was kind of running a truck shop and kind of doing that. I think one of the things I looked at when people would think about deferring maintenance or deferring things was I would explain it real simple to them. And I would say, look, you either pay now or you pay later, but I would guarantee you later comes at a much higher cost kind of with that. So, that getting PMs done, oil changes done on time, man, that's so key. And it's cheap insurance. Oil is cheap compared to what an engine overhaul or getting your truck towed somewhere to kind of get done is. So those are just some of the things that we kind of look at.
Byron, I'm going to make you laugh. My dad is a former attorney, and he says people that begin with attorneys end as friends. People that end with attorneys don't. And in the same way, people that begin with good products end with trucks that are running, and people that end with good products are the ones who are buying a new product to put that new oil into. By the way, Kevin, you were going to add this.
Very true.
I was going to jump in and say, hey, Byron, I really chuckled at that because I'm actually sitting in the parking lot doing the show right now, and I'm sitting out here, and my change engine oil supply came on, and well, I'm 300 miles from home still, so right, it's a sign, right?
Yeah. It's the occult, it's sending a message to you. For your,
that's what it is. It's telling me, right? But I'm going to be a little late with this one. So
yeah. And by the way, like we were saying too, we're not alarmists here, and we want to make sure we're really clear. It happens every once in a while. The idea is to make sure it doesn't happen every once in a while all the time. Is really what we're kind of striving for here. Because and Eric, we can leave this with you too. It becomes much more complex in a fleet situation. An owner operator has his baby, has his girl, has his Flying Dutchman, whatever they want to call it, and that becomes the focus of their world, like our good friend Dean Croak's Grumpy Pete Peterbilt. That thing never lacks for the oil that it needs. But it becomes in fleet management where it becomes a problem, and since the majority of the people we talk to that listen to this show are either independent owner-operators or work for responsible fleets, it's just a matter of you have to really kind of also work with the people who are working with you when you change trucks occasionally, because that's the other thing as well, too, that a fleet will be well managed and one will slip through the cracks. That's a problem, isn't it?
It is, and you don't see a lot of spares sitting around, and that makes it even more critical. You know, in the past, you would see a whole bunch kind of lined up out at the end of the lot, right? And you could just hop into one of those if you need to get through the day, but that's not the case anymore. So scheduling it and accommodating sort of hey, we see something, we really need to down this thing and get some service done. It's a little bit more challenging, but again, it's like Byron said, you know, pay now or pay later. Sometimes you just have to adjust.
Pay now or pay later. That is the whole point of Maintenance Matters, guys. You're not going to believe it. We've actually moved through an occult time wormhole and somehow gotten to the end of this segment. I can't believe it's gotten here so fast. Kevin Lindsey.
No way.
Yeah, done. I mean, look at the clock. Look at the clock, my brother. You were sitting in a parking lot in the middle of like the ether someplace. Our good friend Kevin Lindsey, of course, as always, from Travel Centers of America. But Castrol's Byron Kelchner and Eric Arnold have both joined us this morning, and we love having them as well. Happiest of holidays to you two. We won't get a chance to talk with you guys until after Thanksgiving, but we love having you on. All three of you, thank you for making the time, and have the best of days.